Nate, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that your message is going to really resonate with our listeners. I'll start this with telling our listeners the inspiration for this podcast. Nate and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about Nate coming into Beyond 90, which is our program which takes our members from 90 days up to 1 year alcohol free, which is important when you are overcoming a habit, a dependence, an addiction to alcohol. Nate joined Beyond 90, and during our conversation, he used a phrase that just really caught my ear. The phrase was virtuous cycle. Virtuous cycle. Nate, can you let our listeners know what that means and what that means to you during the process of having released alcohol?
Sure. It's good to see you, Victoria, as always. I'll start with just the definition of virtuous cycle. So a virtuous cycle is a chain of events in which one desirable occurrence leads to another, and that further promotes the first occurrence, and so on, resulting of a continuous process of improvement. And so the one desirable occurrence for me was the decision to live alcohol free and join P90. And then throughout the course of, as the weeks ticked off in P90 and started understanding more why I drank, and my eyes were open to the world beyond alcohol, I started experiencing things that were very positive in my life that made me want to further double down and buffet and strengthen my decision to live alcohol free.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Nate is generous enough to have agreed to share some of his story. What led him to making that virtuous cycle decision? So Nate, can you tell us a little about your background and how you came to the moment of joining Beyond 90, Project 90?
Sure. Well, currently I'm a healthcare consultant, a partner in a healthcare firm. But kind of moving back in history, I started drinking in college. So I did not drink before I went to college. Discovered alcohol early on in college, and then just kind of went haywire with using alcohol during college. That then stayed with me, through grad school, which kind of takes me to, maybe 20 years ago. Still, maybe during the week cut out drinking, but at parties that we would either host or parties that I would go to, getting drunk was the norm. There wasn't any, just having one or two glasses of wine or cocktails or whatever. Continued through into adulthood, marriage with kids. But really, Victoria, over the last 3 to 4 years, the dangerous habit of getting frankly drunk during the week started creeping in more and more. Drinking alone, hiding my drinking, or trying to. We can really never hide our alcohol from our family, as we all discover sooner or later from my family. And then, the last 6 months, or, the months leading up to the decision to join AFL and P90, just got out of control and was, leading me versus me leading it, or controlling alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, so then we arrive at the decision, if I may, to join P90, kind of the the episode there, or would you like to
I'd
take
like
it
to
somewhere
just
else?
dive into that. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you didn't drink it all in high school. You started in college and you really liked it.
Yeah, it was pretty quick from 0 to 60. Maybe like a
Mm,
second.
wow.
Um,
Wow.
and turns out there's some kind of family history of that, as I've now come to know
Mm-hmm.
more about. I guess I'll say my susceptibility to alcohol. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it did not take long for me to enjoy alcohol immensely, and
Mm,
it
mm-hmm.
just you know stayed with me really kind of ever since.
Ever since, yeah. I highlight that because I think it's important for people to understand that this can look different for different people. Uh, you've heard my story, Nate, that I drank in college, had very few consequences, just some hangovers and, silly experiences. Got married out of college, had my children, barely drank. It snuck, I thought, because I also have a family history, I thought I had dodged that bullet. And when it came back into my life after the passing of my mother, I was having panic attacks and such. It was very, very slow. It was a very slow descent. And that caused cognitive dissonance because it didn't look like what I thought problem drinkers looked like. I thought, wait. So for our listeners, I think this is an invitation to release preconceptions about what a problem drinker looks like. We can look very, very different. Our experiences may be very different, but the feelings are the same. And then when you grew up and had a family, you did what so many of us do, which is put some boundaries around your drinking. Oh, this is a little too much. I'm a husband, I'm a father. I'll just do it on weekends. Except I feel like when people do that, and I did it too, I, manage, budget my days, budget my drinks. What would happen? Tell me if this happened for you. It sounds like it did. Uh, I would squeeze all of my drinking into those drinking approved days. Is that what it was like for you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then slowly, because alcohol can be relentless, the weekends weren't enough. You weren't able to scratch the itch enough on the weekends, and that's when things started getting really sticky and sneaky.
Yeah. For the longest time, any party that we would throw, speaking of, kind of compartmentalizing it to weekends or parties that we would go to, just included a lot of drinking, which, as you kind of mentioned, was normal behavior, and still is normal and accepted behavior
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Um, but again, a couple of years ago, it started creeping in where I found myself filling what I thought was a void, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that can be described as boredom,
Mm-hmm.
or just like a mental escape. And my solution was alcohol, because I thought, well, I feel great at these parties. I have such a great time. That can probably, you know, give me a better experience doing anything, watching a ball game, whether it be on TV or, frankly, one of my kids' sporting events.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just lives in your life rent free and in your head rent free, and becomes a solution,
Well
right? Or
said.
so you think that's a solution. And
Well,
there I was kind of trapped.
very, very well put. Yes, as parents and workers, life can, as much as we love our families and we may really enjoy our work, there's a tedium to it. It can become tedious. And so when we have so much fun on the weekends, spot on. It makes sense to say, well, gosh, I love going to my kids' games, but or to the ball games, but why not just have a few drinks and elevate this experience? And alcohol loves when we do that. It's like, heck yeah, I'll make everything better. Don't you worry. How
Yeah,
did,
and then one of the well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And then one of the
mm,
challenges in is when you try to stop that, and then you go to said event, you feel like you're missing something.
mm-hmm,
So it itself is its own kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you're just kind of off to the races, and
mm-hmm,
um, before you know it.
mm-hmm. Well, and as you've learned now, through the neuroscience that we teach around in Project 90, you understand now how that happened, because alcohol gives us such a hit of dopamine and serotonin and GABA that it does elevate an experience for the first 30 minutes or so, and then comes some consequences. But it makes sense that then if you go to a game or something like that without it, your brain has stopped creating a normal amount of dopamine because become accustomed to the drug. And so ball games feel boring. And you look around you and you see the alcohol and you're like, wow, I know how to make this better. I said I wouldn't drink. And that is
Yeah,
that is exhausting.
yep. And then you spend all your time thinking about how much you don't want to drink or how much you do want to drink, and you find yourself, or at least I found myself, spending a huge amount of mental energy on the drink or not drink. Did I drink too much? And it's unsustainable, or at least it got that way for me.
It's so much. And again, for our listeners, Nate and I had some different paths, but ultimately we ended up feeling exactly the same way. And so I'm going to take a guess that many of our listeners are nodding their head right now saying, me too. That's what it's like. And we can't even imagine the freedom that comes when that negotiating and bargaining and rationalizing is no longer an issue.
It is a life-changing experience. And I can remember the first, I'm not sure exactly when, oh, I know when it was, when I made the decision to join P90 and make a contract with myself, which I think are the most important contracts we make, frankly,
Mm-hmm.
to not drink, which I had been hedging on for years. And I probably guessed that other people were, can I drink less? But that mental energy expended on walking that line was still immense. And once I made the decision, it was a light bulb, and a huge amount of mental space opened up. And it was a freeing and just existential experience. I remember that week and just how I talked with my family and including my wife, and life changing, to
Mm.
be sure.
I remember when you came in and you were extremely committed. You also went through periods of extreme discomfort
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning. So that's how it goes. You were 100% in this program. You have skin in the game. It is, you are expected to show up at a certain amount of group coaching calls. You're expected to connect with members on Marco Polo. You get a video each day. And that is part of our agreement with one another. you have expectations of us and we have expectations of you. And I admire how you stuck to that commitment. I remember one call in particular, and I don't remember the topic, but you were in early days, and you were very uncomfortable. But then you showed up again on the next call, and I thought, yeah, there he goes.
Yeah, I think part of that, or maybe even most of that uncomfort, is at the beginning, you're admitting and recognizing a lot in yourself. And while it's positive and good that you're starting the journey,
Mhm.
you're also coming to the realization that the way you've been living has not been ideal. And so that first, well, for some people, it's just the first week. For some people, it's the first month. For some people, it could be maybe all of P90. I mean, you see a variety of experiences, and we help one another along in there, which, it's an immersive experience. And that's probably, I'm sure, what you were seeing, Victoria. Um, there are calls with tears, both good tears, bad tears, but you're finally meeting the challenge head on, and that could be uncomfortable in a
Yes,
good way. I would say, in a good way.
I get that. Yeah, yeah. It's well, it's like other things. We start the journey, and no one ever says it's going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And working with a group of high achievers, these are people who are accustomed to that feeling. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to put in the work in getting my degree. I'm going to put in the work growing my business. I'm going to put in the work to do what I know is going to be worth it. When you're dealing with alcohol, there's more emotion involved. And yes, you start to see yourself, the version of you that was under the influence, and you go, oh, yuck.
Yeah, there's some cringe-worthy moments, but that just can also, if you use that, I guess, those uncomfortable feelings, that can keep pushing you
Yes,
to change that around.
absolutely. And again, back to the educational part of our program, we remind you that what alcohol did to your brain and how it impaired your judgment and your decision making, and uh, remind you that that's not who you really are. The person showing up, the person who is brave enough to make that decision, because these are not people who have lost everything, but they care enough about their values and their families and what they want that they say, I'll do the work. And that's who you really are. You're that guy. You're a guy who wants to live in a virtuous cycle. And
Exactly.
you just can't do that when alcohol's got a hold of you.
I certainly couldn't. I would be tough to. It'd be tough to envision a scenario where someone could, if you were being really honest with yourself. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Being honest with yourself can be uncomfortable, but it's liberating.
oh, completely liberating. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So as you went through this process, and like you said about the virtuous cycle, that one very important decision led to other things. Can you share some of those other things that kept you going in the right direction?
Certainly. So I think when I was using alcohol, it was, I thought it was helping me fill time in a positive way, which sounds horrible to say out loud right now.
I get it.
Um, and as those of us who are going through this journey know and could come out the other side and begin this virtuous cycle, it's the exact opposite. So when you eliminate that and it opens your mind and your time to other things, that's when the virtuous cycle begins. So at first for me, there were, um, I guess I'll say more simple but very important things that started that cycle. So noticing that I was a better listener, had
Mhm.
more mental capacity to spend on things that were worth thinking about and I needed to think about. Being able to have more energy for, physical workouts and improving my
Mhm.
physical health and mental health. My anxiety, now is almost gone, which is saying a lot for me. Um,
Yeah.
my confidence level went up. So all of those things then feed in to wanting to, commit in an even more committed way to an alcohol-free lifestyle. So that's what I'll call kind of the first stage, the things that you may notice quickly. And then I connected my P90 experience, and we talk about this, as you know very well as a coach, Victoria, with wanting to use all of this newfound energy and time to connecting back to my community. So my community of my family community, my community with my children and their school, my parental community, and other, parents and friends that I had, not seen in a long time because here I am
Mhm.
sitting on the couch doing whatever, drinking, thinking I was, accomplishing something. And then for me, my spiritual community, and you and I have talked about that.
Mhm.
I happen to be a person of faith, but spiritual can mean anything you want. There's a huge spectrum on there, but you then, without alcohol, have that time and mental capacity to reconnect with your spiritual side.
Mhm.
And it's the joining of those communities, Victoria, that really started the major virtuous cycle in my life, because that is so rewarding personally. And then you're giving back
Yes.
and, you know, giving back to your community, giving back to, being a productive member of society, your little village around you
Mhm.
is extremely rewarding. And that's the virtuous cycle that I now find myself in.
That's amazing. Uh, I know many of us, myself included, and many of our listeners can connect to that because they have multifaceted lives. They have their professional organizations, their community organizations, their kids, their schools, the churches, or whatever other growth things, their yoga community, whatever it is. Uh, Alcohol isolates us. And even, I'm curious, Nate, even if you weren't spending your time sitting on the couch drinking that particular day, I'm wondering how for many of us, we experience self loathing, shame, things like that. I'm wondering if you can look back and say, maybe I wasn't drinking on that particular day, but I stayed home anyway because I felt what?
Completely. Yeah. So even if you're not drinking, for those of us that are familiar with this. First of all, you're recovering physically, you're recovering mentally. My anxiety would be spiking as a natural introvert.
Mm.
And so, along with a number of other things that just keep you, or kept me, isolated from trying new things or even things that I was familiar with, because you could think of a zillion reasons when all of those things are in your mind as to, kind of why you can't do this or can't do that,
Yeah.
versus thinking of reasons why you can, which I was only able to do once alcohol was out of my life. I mean, I would do, some things here and there,
Mhm.
but maybe at 10% of what I'm doing now. Um, and I was just sick of wasting that time.
Mhm. Mhm. I know that's going to resonate. It certainly reminds me of the old me. We do use a lot of that word can't. Oh, I can't make it. I couldn't make it to places if they weren't going to be serving alcohol. I thought, ugh, what a drag. I would go if it was something that if I was required to go. Um, but ew, so much more fun if we have some wine around. And then, like you said, just the feelings of um, not feeling good about yourself, knowing the truth, knowing how much you're drinking, uh, leads us to feeling very inauthentic. And you mentioned the word introvert. I don't know if you've paid attention to this, Nate, but so many of our members are naturally introverted. So when it's hard enough for us to go out there and engage and be seen. And when you're feeling that way about yourself, having secrets and things you don't want people to see, you're going to find reasons to stay home, even if you're not drinking that day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because I was in the mental state of thinking I needed the crutch of alcohol to engage properly in all of these activities. Physical activities, probably not so much. I mean, I wouldn't, have a few beers and then like go for a run or anything.
Yeah,
Although
that's good.
I, I, I'm surprised I didn't, actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, it's all of those things. Right. You just invent ways that you can't do something, or you shouldn't do something, or it's going to be tough without alcohol,
Mm.
versus when you're living alcohol free, even if something is new, or something that you're reintroducing yourself to, you're so much more awake and aware and able to engage that it makes the experience, frankly, even if it's a little uncomfortable because you aren't used to it, just that much more real. And that's what causes the dopamine, the adrenaline, all of the good biochemical rushes now, instead of useless old alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we use the word curiosity a lot in our program. And instead of, oh, this going to this party is going to be hard, or whatever event, going on this vacation, having this conversation with someone is going to be hard. Uh, we use the word curiosity. Get curious. How do you know that? Are you sure? What if it's great? And you can see the light bulbs going off over people's heads. Like, gosh, I never even considered that it could go well.
Yeah, I loved those conversations, and that certainly started me on the trail of positivity, the kind of what if.
Mhm.
And even if I'm at a party or an event or whatever, and you kind of think, well, gosh, with alcohol, I was either the life of the party or you're constantly talking. Well, what if I went to a party and mostly listened? How would that? And it's actually really fun. And then you engage in things in conversations that are meaningful to you. Um, I don't want to say deep in all respects, but deeper, maybe, more interesting rather than just superficial, which is,
Mhm.
if you're at one of those parties and you're just drinking on, it's impossible. There was for me to get into a conversation that had true depth to it.
Mhm.
Or if I did, I would forget it. So,
Well,
you know,
exactly. And I have found that because like you, I tend to be actually very introverted. I play an extrovert on demand. Push a button, extrovert. I mean, look what I do for work. But definitely on the more introverted side, naturally. I enjoy both parts of that of my personality in that way. Um, but I have experienced that I enjoy social gatherings and people appreciate someone who remembers them, someone who can recall things about the last conversation they had. I can't tell you how many times I went to a party and met someone for the first time, but it was actually the fourth. And hopefully, gosh, I can't imagine how that looked. It didn't look good. Hi, nice to meet you. I've met you 3 times, Victoria. Oh yeah. So it really does make us a valuable part of social gatherings because we are listening and we're remembering.
yeah. And the magical thing about our brains is when you stop handicapping yourself with alcohol and you start re-engaging in these communities, as
Mhm.
I mentioned that I have, and some of these folks I haven't had a meaningful conversation with in a long time, you actually start remembering things from years ago that with the fog of alcohol,
Mhm.
I would at least never remember.
Mm.
And that's an awesome feeling. So,
It is.
yes, there's this process of kind of restarting your engagement with community, with your family, with whomever it may be, or whatever setting. But once you do that, it can really gain traction quickly,
Mm.
which is a fantastic uh, experience to have, and extremely emotionally positive,
Mm.
and makes you want to relive that, day after day.
Exactly. Yeah, I like to say that we're done running from alcohol. We are running toward the life that we want. And when we start to live the life that we want, we up our pace and we chase what we want. And
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
feels so good. So when alcohol comes knocking, you think, why would I give this up? What I'm running toward, what I'm receiving, the gains that I've achieved for a 30-minute high. Doesn't
Right.
make sense.
Yeah. And I'm new enough, along the journey now, probably just over 100 days in, where I'll have cravings or go to a party. Um, so I don't want listeners to think that, there's this automatic immunity that happens where you don't have that. Um, and sometimes those can even be very powerful. But once you are living in this, I guess, to get back to our kind of phrase, virtuous cycle, you are then able to step back and think, do I want to give that up and kind of just stop that and have to restart it if I can? And
If you can.
you quickly conclude that it is I'll just speak for me. It is not worth it. It's not even close.
Mhm.
So it's becoming easier and easier, but once you're connected to those communities and people and chasing things, and like I
Mhm.
love what you said, the pace just quickens. So the cycle or the wheel gets faster and faster and faster because you're
Mhm.
able to absorb and experience much, much more and handle a lot more. It's just not
Mhm.
worth it.
Right, right. And I love that you touched on on the fact that, look, yeah, I still get some cravings. As much as you're doing in your life, pardon me, as much as you're doing and achieving in your life, uh, the physiology of healing from addiction hasn't changed. Your body is still learning these new ways of thinking and being. And alcohol hasn't forgotten your name. It's going to tap you on the shoulder. Uh, that's part of the process. And one of our goals is to liberate you from the guilt or shame or the I shouldn't be feeling this now, and understanding this is a physiological process, and the best way to move through it is with support, connection, accountability, and paving a life for yourself that will eventually make alcohol very small and irrelevant. So thanks for sharing that, Nate. So
Absolutely.
as you move into Beyond 90, you are at about 100 something days now. What excites you? What are you running toward? How are you quickening your pace? What's ahead for Nate?
Well, I mean, it's really just continuing that cycle. I'll I guess I'll kind of repeat myself a little bit, but it's the further connection to community, um, and being a more, maybe even being a leader in some of these communities, which is unthinkable when I was using alcohol, at least for me. And that's what really has me excited. It's okay, I've now re-engaged with these communities. I would say I'm kind of benefiting from being in these communities more than perhaps I'm giving into them, or maybe that was phrased incorrectly, more than I'm adding to them. So the next phase in what I'm excited about is, being an additive member, being like a force multiplier to these communities and really showing my true potential, um, with these people and organizations, um, that I really care about. So that has me excited because now I have all of this energy and mental capacity to commit to that. And really, the sky's the limit,
Hmm.
and it's a great feeling.
So well said. And I'm so excited that you are continuing in this community of really just like-minded. This is, like-minded individuals who want the same kind of thing. Um, working within our little community of Beyond 90, where you can share those dreams and those goals, and check in with us and tell us what you're doing, be celebrated, and if things get tough, be supported. Continuing that vulnerability that we just start to scratch the surface on in Project 90. It's really exciting. You have so much to offer in our little world, but certainly to the world around you. So watch out, world.
Well,
Nate
thank you for
Schoell.
that.
Yeah, Nate Schoell is back.
Yeah, hopefully that's a good thing. At least
Nate
for me, it
Schoell
is. So
Nate Schoell 2.0. That's what the world gets today and tomorrow.
sounds
So
fantastic.
fantastic. Well, thank you, Nate, for being here. You have a beautiful message, very inspiring. It's always an honor to work with our members and then have the chance for this time together to interview you and recap and dream. So thanks for sharing your experience with our listeners and spending time with me.
My pleasure, Victoria. And thank you for your support and the other coaches. It has been life-changing. So very much enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Nate. All right, listeners, until next time, take good care and have an awesome day.